Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. This week, we try something a little different. We have a special guest, Fred Warmbier, owner of a metal finishing business he founded in Cincinnati in 1998. About 10 years ago, Warmbier was ready to walk away from that business. It just never seemed like I could have the type of business that I wanted, he says, where things worked properly and our employees were happy and our customers were happy. That changed when he discovered the Deming Management Method through a consultant, Allan, who helped him tame the chaos. Where does one start with Deming? You start, says Allan, who is chairman of the advisory council of the W. Edwards Deming Institute, where the pain is. As it happens, and as we discuss in this conversation, Fred Warmbier has experienced more than his share of pain. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. Same thing with our daily newsletter, the 21 Hats Morning Report, which highlights the most important news of the day for business owners and which you can subscribe to at 21hats.com, where you can also find transcripts of our podcast episodes and lots of other articles and interviews. The episode is titled, When Fred Warmbier Wanted to Quit, Deming Brought Him Back. Welcome, Fred and Kelly. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Fred, let's start with you. Why don't you tell us about finishing technology? What does your business do?
Sure. I own a metal finishing company, Finishing Technology Incorporated. Our main business would be anodizing of aluminum. The industries we serve are...
What does that mean?
Anodizing of aluminum?
Yeah, for civilians like me.
Sure. For the layman?
Yes.
Well, Kelly's an expert on this. Tell us, Kelly. I'm just kidding. So aluminum anodizing, it's actually a fascinating process. It's a conversion coating where you take the molecular structure of a plain piece of aluminum, which we'll call it random shapes of molecules. And when you put it through the anodizing process, which would be you put the piece of the part that you want to anodize into a bath of an electrolyte, and the part becomes the anode, and there's a cathode in. You apply electrical current to it, and it changes the structure of the metal, actually. So it converts it. And the new structure would be more similar to a honeycomb look, and it builds it up very strong. It's very cool because it's not like paint where you're building it up and it can chip off. It's actually the part of the actual structure. So who uses this would be the obvious ones that you'll understand the name of is NASA, aviation, transportation, headlight lamps, the back ends of those would be anodized, lots of parts that that in cars, food equipment, popcorn machines, the frames for the popcorn makers, the pizza pans in Pizza Hut. That would be your food equipment. And then firearms would be military weapons, AR-15s.
What a range. What is the purpose of the process?
It's to make I like to say it's a tough, durable coating.
And why do you need it in a popcorn maker?
Well, so that it doesn't get white rust on it, so it maintains its appearance, so it's cosmetic and it's functional. And there's measurements of this. And in the automotive world, you may have or may not have heard of a process called salt spray testing. And that's where they'll actually take a body frame and they'll put it into a chamber that's 95 degrees, 95% humidity, and 5% salt. And they'll run it in there and they'll scratch the paint and they'll see if it rusts underneath it. In the old days, when cars rusted out, they might last 50 hours. So now today, they would range from 100 hours to 1,000 hours, depending on the application. For the type of anodizing that we do, we always get 1,000 hours. It's easy. So it's a very durable coating.
How did you get into this? Did you start the business?
I did. So I started a metal finishing business in 1998. I was introduced to industry through my dad, who was a distributor of equipment to industry. And I worked there for a while. I didn't like it. But when I was out making calls, people would ask me, would you like to run parts for me? Would you like to clean these coils in our washers at the Ford Motor Company plant? And in that case, there were 100 washers and they had 20 coils per washer, and I got $100 per coil. I realized there's money in this. And so the evolution was I started doing that type of work, which I would call grunt work, low entry, meaning anybody with a pickup truck and a pressure washer can do. And then we escalated into other offerings over time. We then started a gun bluing business, which is black oxide. And then that wasn't very big. And the customers there said, if you put in an anodizing line, I'd bring you my work. That was the extent of my market analysis. And then what I found out was these customers weren't big at all. But I invested money and I put in an anodized line, and it really triggered a lot of things.
Let's bring Kelly Allan into this conversation. How did you first connect with Kelly? And tell us, where was your business at the time that you thought you might be able to use his services?
At that time, I was ready to retire. I couldn't afford it financially, but it was.
And you were certainly too young.
Oh yeah, and it was such a mess that I was ready to give up. And
why?
We were crisis managing. There was too much drama. There was too much crisis, and it just never seemed like I could have the type of business that I wanted, where things worked properly and our employees were happy and our customers were happy. And there's you're going to always have a little bit of drama, but there would be less drama. And so I didn't feel like I was capable of creating that type of company. So, I'm resourceful. I would have stopped doing that and went and found something else to do. And Kelly, my wife, signed me up for the course for presidents at Aileron. And I really enjoyed that.
Aileron is a really interesting organization that all three of us are familiar with in Dayton, Ohio, that supports businesses in all kinds of ways.
I took a course for presidents there, and that was good. And I learned a lot, but it was a little bit higher level than I was ready to take on. And then I saw that they were offering a Deming Management Methods seminar there. And I do work for Toyota. I still do. And I thought, well, I've always associated Deming with Toyota. So I signed up for the class. Kelly taught it, and it completely resonated for me. And so it just made sense. It was because I was basically in the weeds, trying to run a manufacturing company with very little help or guidance. None, I would say. There's no books for this.
Trial and error.
Yeah. You're finding that out, Lauren.
Yes, I
Kelly,
am.
we'll pepper Lauren because he's now.
I'm asking the questions here. Kelly, let's give us a little background. First of all, you run a management consulting business. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I have a number of associates, and we work with companies large and small. We met Fred in fall of 2013 is when we did the Deming seminar at Aileron. And you never know who's going to be showing up at the seminar, what kind of leaders. But Fred, being Fred, also came with, I think, 4 or 5 of his people, some of them from the line, because he's a lifelong learner. And that's a good clue for any entrepreneur, because you have to be a lifelong learner. You have to enjoy being a lifelong learner. So I wear that consulting, small consulting firm hat. So it's, management consulting, also, marketing related things, some IT spread across 24 associates. And then the other hat I wear is I'm chairman of the advisory council for the W. Edwards Deming Institute, and helped design the seminar that Fred attended. And I remember we had a speaker there who, a great guy, who had been a turnaround that we had worked with. And he spoke very eloquently about the struggles of that. And And Fred came up at the end and he said, I talked to my guys and we'd like to work with you and you don't have to worry about getting paid, but we need to start soon because I'm really tired of this business. I'm really tired of what's going on. We need to get this taken care of, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I like that where you're going to get paid. And I think part of being in small business is being willing to reach out and ask for help. And so, for example, that you'll appreciate this, Kelly, I'm now at a place where I want to create a board of advisors. So I've contacted Aileron and I'm working with them to create a board of advisors for the next phase of my business. And that's all part of this. That's why we're here. It's so important to let people know that, I'm not going to have the answers. I've got a successful company, but there's certain things that I don't know. And I'm going to take the advice from others.
All right. So I want to talk a little bit about what you found, Kelly, when you connected with Fred and started working with him. But first, we're all familiar with the Deming name, but give us a quick refresher. Who is Deming and what's his method?
Sure. Edward Deming, born 1900, died 1993, was asked by General MacArthur after the Second World War to go to Japan to do a number of things. Unbeknownst to him, a lot of the Japanese engineers and professors had translated his work, his research and writings about quality, especially into Japanese. So when they found he was coming, there was a big effort to get him to stay for a while and speak, which he did. And from that, and he told them, I think in the late 40s, early 50s, that if they would follow what he was teaching, that within 5 years, they would be exporting quality products to the world, and there would be screams for protection from the countries that were having imports because the quality would be so high. That's the only time I know when he was wrong. It only took 3 years for companies because they were really desperate. I mean, it was a war. They were rebuilding after the war. And so this approach offered hope. So most people knew about Deming from a quality standpoint, but that's really about 20% of his body of work. So with Fred, for example, we're also working on the 80%, which is the management method around how you organize and operate an organization. And it's really 4 big things. And that's what Fred was hearing at the seminar, the 2.5-day Deming Institute seminar. We teach a few of the quality. There are like 65 quality tools. We teach a few of those in the seminar, but it's really about how you see the system, your organization as a system, and how you run it for productivity, profitability, joy in work, creativity and innovation, et cetera. And that's what Fred really is latching on to.
Those are all very positive things that everybody would want. Could you give us a sense of how Deming gets you there? And I know that's way too broad a question for one quick answer.
No, I think it's a fair question.
Take some of Fred's examples. So, for example, one of the things that you heard Fred talk about, and one of the things he mentioned to me early on, was we have chaos. We have chaos. So we just started with some simple things, because when Deming works, quality goes up and costs go down. So that's pretty powerful, right? And time after time after time, Fred found that to be true. Whether it was about the intake of parts, the process for cleaning parts, pre-anodizing, the process for anodizing. So there were flow charts and fishbone charts and discussions with people that would about how to test a theory of how to fix a problem. That's often called the Deming cycle, the plan, do, study, act cycle. And Fred would just engage everybody and say, hey, we're getting spots on the parts. Where are they coming from? What do we do about it? Are they coming in now? Or there's something they're coming in with that we're not catching? To the other end, well, after all this work is done, how do you make sure the parts get shipped on time and don't get damaged before they get shipped after they've been cleaned and anodized? And how do you do that efficiently and effectively without killing your people, wearing out your people so they have joy at work and so they're engaged in the process of improvement?
I think most small businesses, they nail a couple things really well. And the first thing's going to be sales. And that's usually the guy that starts the company. And then they're comfortable with everything that they do and they know how to bring home the business. And over time, what management encompasses is it's so much broader that it's overwhelming. And what Deming did for me was they broke it down, and so he's mentioned 62 things, and I say no, there's only 4. And if you think about the 4, and you don't have to do any of them, it's just out there, and that's what I really related to. And the 4 things were: you have to have an appreciation of a system, and again, it's one thing to think that there is a system, but then there's another thing to actually have a system that's functional, that's somewhat scalable. So the first thing is you appreciate that if I put together a robust system, then my employees will not be able to run the company without it. Because with the lack of a system, there's chaos. Everybody's going and doing everything, and they're trying to do their best. But if there's not really a method and a system, then you get chaos. Typically, and that's just the way it is. It was that way for me, and it's that way for everyone. So that was the first thing. You have to have a system, and you have to appreciate it, and then you have to have a theory of knowledge. And what that was an interesting concept to me. Okay, well, you've got people around you. You've got to impart information, but it's not information. It's knowledge. It's information put to work. And how do we do that? So so I had to learn how a theory of knowledge. How am I going to teach my employees to appreciate the system and work within it? Okay, I have to have a theory of teaching, a theory of knowledge. That's the second thing. The third thing is I have to understand variation. And what is variation? It's simply put, things don't run in a straight line. They kind of do this. And we have to understand, where do we fit in with this? Are we here? Are we here? And what can we do to manage our system to bring it in within acceptable limits that we want to run our system with? So we have to understand that. Most people think you have to be perfect. That's not that we aren't. So I had to learn about that and understand that. And then the last thing, which I think was really one of the most important things to me, was psychology. And that was a huge component. And because I had simply never, ever considered what is the psychological component of running a business. And it's huge. What are the employees thinking when they walk in the door? How do they feel when they're here? Are their needs being met? What are their motivations? Think about it. These are cool concepts that they don't have a lot to do with business, but because guess what happens when you understand these concepts and you're able to apply them to your business? You create a great culture, and you can't fake it.
I talk to business owners, entrepreneurs all the time. I've been doing this for 20 years. And what you've just laid out there is a very different conversation than I typically have. It's bordering on academic, which is something that, from my experience, a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners run away from. That's not their comfort zone. Kelly, I'm curious. It strikes me that you need a special kind of person like Fred who is open to this. How unusual is it for you to run into somebody who is willing to engage the way he obviously did?
2 things, I guess. Well, one is what Fred described is Deming's system of profound knowledge. And he named it that in part because he said, if you understand these 4 elements, and you do not have to be expert in all 4, you understand all 4 elements and how they interact, you will have profound insight. You will gain profound knowledge. And that's a competitive advantage. So we work with lots of organizations. And sometimes we when they come to us, we don't start talking to them about the system of profound knowledge. Fred was an exception in that regard, but we have many others who what they want to do is to solve the kinds of issues that Fred described. So once you start to apply the methods around those 4 areas of psychology, variation, theory of knowledge, and appreciation for a system, when you start to apply the methods around those their problems, they get hooked because they start to see the results. They start to see the magic.
Could you give us an example? I mean, you've given us kind of the framework. What happened when you guys decided to engage with each other and work together on this? What's that process look like? How did you get started? Kelly, did you go down to Cincinnati?
We did it all virtually, in fact.
He's never been to my factory.
I've never been to his plant. And all
That's
these years,
amazing. You're not that far away.
He didn't need to go. And so, no, again, so let's back up, because I think it is important when you say that the entrepreneurs you've worked with, this would be, we'll call it an esoteric approach. I'll call it the hippie approach. You don't want to do it, you don't do it. But the reality is, here's the problem when you don't have this concept and this understanding. Generally, you get wore out in business. There's not joy in work, and you miss so much. And so, because I'm at the age now where a lot of my buddies are retiring, and it's sad because they're beat up. They've made lots of money. It has nothing to do with that, but it's just reached a point where they're tired of fighting the fucking Bronco, and that's not the way to run a business. And so I would challenge you that. It may sound overwhelming to you, but I didn't say, so tell me about psychology, Kelly. It was basically, my God, I've got a customer from New York. We're burning their parts and they're trying to sue me. And so, I mean, let's be honest. That's how you get here. It's almost like you want to go to a psychiatrist. You're not going to go there when you're rolling sevens and everything's great. You're going to go there when you've got issues.
You're motivated to solve them.
And you're motivated to solve them. But the reality is, if you bring it back and you say, what's my number one reason for being here? It's really to have joy in work. And if you can hold on to that theme, you can say, well, I'm here to make money. Well, okay, great. Here's the challenge with that. You've been around and you've been an entrepreneur for a long enough time and you've been successful. Money's not on the table anymore. All right. You've made it. So then, okay. All right. Well, that's not my reason for being here. All right. So I want to be productive. I want to be fruitful. But I also want to enjoy what I'm doing. And then I can look for a greater purpose. And that's, to me, the beauty of being a successful entrepreneur is you're able to look for a greater purpose. And so today, for me, it would be a little different than it was when I met Kelly. But in the beginning, it was all crisis management.
Give me an example. What kind of problem did you first throw at him, and how did you move toward solving it?
Well, I think it would have been the spots on the parts. I mean, okay, so I have spots on the parts. Now, keep in mind, an anodizing operation has 15 stages in the tank, and they're all chemically sensitive. And so you can if you get spots after the parts are run, it's a guessing game as to where the spots are. And so just by having someone back there to say, well, let's just evaluate your process and make sure how is each tank, and can you confirm it? And with this calm approach that says, no, we can't rush into this because we don't really know what it is. And so and this is understanding variation. He would ask me, what's the variation? I don't know. Well, Fred, is it special variation or is it common? This is so good to know.
What's the difference between special and common variation?
Talk, Kelly, on this, because you're going to do a better job than me.
Yes. Well, if you have common cause variation, and most variation is common cause, the way you fix the issue, whether it's not enough sales or you've got accounting problems or your financial reporting's off, you have to work on the overall system and process. If you have a special cause variation that's a surprise to you, like suddenly we have 10 times or 20 times the number of spots on parts, that means something special probably happened because it's out of the ordinary. It is special. If you're driving to work and your commute, and it usually takes you 15, 20 minutes, and one day there's a jackknife 18-wheeler on the highway, that's special cause. You wouldn't change your route because of that one day. But you might want to say, I could probably get to work in 12 minutes if I tried some other routes. That could be a process improvement. So I can, over time, I analyze how I get it down from 20 minutes to 15 minutes, right? To know the difference between special cause and common cause is to know what type of action to take. And spreadsheets don't tell you that. Spreadsheets just show you what the numbers are. So when I was talking to Fred about the type of variation, I was trying to get a handle on how much variation he was used to having and how much rework was being done. So there's rework in IT development, right? There's rework in anodizing parts. There's rework in sales. There's rework almost everywhere. If I can reduce the rework, that's profit.
And that's so key, because what happens is we confuse it and we say, oh, wow. So my system, if I have a dirty tank, it's going to produce spotty parts. That's common. That's not special. But if you treat it special, you throw the bathwater out. It just ends up being.
But you start blaming people.
Yeah. And so you must identify the variation. Are they acting like they normally would act? Yes. Okay. Then that's their common behavior. And you either change your system to change it, or that behavior is never going to stop. And you say, well, if you titrate the tanks every 4 hours and make sure they always stay within this range, you don't get that variation. Oh, then that's the solution, and you change the system.
Costs go down, the quality goes up.
Absolutely. Yeah, they do. And then the beautiful thing is then you can move on to the more important things.
So what are you referring to?
I'm referring to sales, growth, joy in work, safety, health.
So how long did it take you to go from chaos to finding joy in work?
Okay. Well, I've always been a happy guy, so I never give up, but I'm pragmatic as well. I would say, so it was probably 18 months. We were working in that time period. So, and some of the key things that I really appreciated was, we were doing 200 to 300 orders a week then, orders for customers. And it seems like we have to get the parts in, we have to log them in, we have to process them, we have to ship them. There's many different components to that. And early on, we had these recipe sheets that we would put into running the parts, and no two were alike. And it was, oh my gosh. And it was overwhelming to me, because I've got all these processes, and we built a system. And so I had to take a deep breath, and I had to work nights, and I had to say, oh my God, how can I expect the employees to get it right when I can't even give them the right information? And so then that's frustrating. So you take a deep breath, and then thankfully we had somebody like Kelly around who would say, no, we want one good transaction. We don't need to do all 200 of them. Let's just get one right. And even today, I call it the perfect transaction. And I think, I've heard that term from Kelly. And so it took 18 months. And then we were only able to begin to say, all right, it's better than it was. It's a lot better. But you don't turn it on overnight, because guess what's happened? You have missed tremendous opportunities from the years ago when you were running chaotically. The people that had showed up that you really didn't gauge how much business they did. And then over time, we've gotten to meet some of those people, and we realized they weren't spending $50,000 a year on anodizing. They were spending $2 million. That's a huge difference. And now we're in a position that we can talk to those people, and we can get their business and make them happy.
I wanted to just jump in for a second. You'd asked Fred about how long it took to get joy in work, and I would agree it was about the 18 months. But he started seeing results of the process within weeks.
Really?
It started getting better. The chaos started to go down as he started to get momentum in that. And I think, Fred, you talk about it very poignantly when you talk about one day you sort of woke up at about 18 months and you said, I realized that my employees now also had joy in work, and that's why I'm here.
And that is such a key point. And you know what's really tough as an entrepreneur? When you're sweating the load and you think the weight of the world is on your shoulders and your employees have joy in work, there's a problem there. And that's what the average entrepreneur does. The average guy that's going to work for you, he wants to be happy. And he wants to be secure, and he wants to have a nice job and get paid fairly, go home and do his hobbies and raise his family and things like that. So I saw that happening around me. And And yet, and this is, I think, typical for entrepreneurs, the weight of the world was on my shoulders because, oh, I've got to do all this and I've got to do all that. And you'd say, well, isn't that the case today? Well, yeah, but it's, I don't know, maybe you just get comfortable with it and you realize that I have to have the same results as them, as the employees.
Did you see financial results in 18 months as well?
Yeah, and one of the interesting things that Kelly brought to my attention was when he got to know me in my business, he said, "You're leaving a lot of money on the table," and so I didn't know what that meant, and so I can say, yeah, back then we were doing maybe $1.5 million in sales, and then now we might be at 7 million in sales, and we're in a pretty good space with this, and we think we can double this, and that's why I talked about the board of advisors. We finally built an infrastructure that we're not intimidated by a lot of work, and we're making great incomes. This is a very good business, and but I just feel like I can do more, and I think it can be. I've gotten to the point where in my life where if it's not fun, then I don't want to do it. And so I think I can have fun growing this business, but also doing it in a way that doesn't punish people, but that creates an infrastructure that when I do leave the company, then I can have a legacy with the company that says, hey, this was better than when he left it, and not selling it. I just met a guy today. He had just sold his company. He's, oh, I'm so glad to be away from that. And it's like, well, if it was that bad, then why didn't you leave 20 years ago? Seriously. And I said, what are you going to do? He goes, I want your life. Because when you get management down, well, you don't work hard. You don't work hard. You shouldn't work hard. You should enjoy what you're doing. You should be good at what you're doing. You should tackle the difficult things, and you should be able to oversee a fun operation.
Lauren, I want to jump in because there's a piece here I think that a lot of entrepreneurs would really appreciate hearing Fred talk about, and that is how he changed the culture. Now, I don't think it was a bad culture to begin with, right? You know, he's not beating up on people, but he didn't have a culture yet at that point, which was really all hands on deck to try to figure stuff out. The organization was not a true system in terms of people understanding upstream, downstream, and their role in it, and how they were all in it together. So, if you think it'd be useful, maybe Fred would talk about.
Okay, but before we go there, I'd like Lauren to tell me what culture is in a company. What do you think? I just find it difficult to put a nail on.
I think it has a lot to do with how you treat each other, how colleagues treat colleagues, and your commitment to serving your customers. How far will you go to make sure that your customers get what they need? I think those are the most important elements of culture in my mind. What's your answer?
Well, I don't. I kind of look at it a little differently. Because I did have to think about it, and I think inputs equal outputs here. So if you have the proper inputs, then you create the culture that you want. Culture is what you feel when you walk into the plant. It's that simple. And so you can't talk about it. You can't say, we're going to change the culture. And you know what? We're all buddies now. Let's be like Dog the Bounty Hunter and put our arms around each other and say a prayer. But you can feel it.
Did you try that?
I would. I mean, I would. So, okay, I had a friend come over today. He wanted me to do a little project yesterday, actually, for him. And he was in business, and he started talking about, he said, wow, you guys, you got a lot going on here. I didn't realize you have this many machines and all this. I said, yeah, we're pretty active. And then he said, so, you've got safety issues. How's your safety record? And I said, oh, it's pretty good. I probably had a few safety incidents over the last decade, but they would be very minor and not a whole lot. Okay. Oh, so do you have safety meetings and tell them the way it's going to be? And he's going back to this command and control where you say, if you don't wear your safety glasses, you're fired. And so if you don't do this, you're fired. And so That's where the fun begins when you're running a company. Now, I only have 25 employees, and somebody that's got 500 employees, they'd say, well, I could never do this. Well, Kelly could help them with that, but I can only speak from my experience. What I realized is, well, okay, so we're going to treat a human being like shit because they don't understand the benefit of wearing their safety glasses. That's my problem, not theirs. I haven't created an environment that they understand the need for safety glasses, unless that they are incapable of understanding. And there's a certain element that are, but they're rare. So again, but I hear it all the time where it's like, and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And it's like, whoa, no, we have to have an understanding here. So in our plant, you have to wear safety glasses. Well, first of all, you're not allowed on the anodizing line unless you're an operator or somebody with authorization, because it's a safety issue. But if you're up there, you always wear safety glasses because there's chemistry up there, and everybody does, because it's just, well, they have to, because we would have to take action if they didn't. That's kind of part of the culture, is to get people to understand why you're doing things, to take the time to invest in them. And when you do that, and then the culture starts evolving like, oh, I understand the reason that he cares. So today, so we just hired a few new people, and I hadn't done this in a while, Kelly, the PDSA. And so I thought, I got to get these people to know me. I'm not around much. I don't show up a lot. So I said, all right, Alex, grab the 3 new hires in here. They've been here a few months, and bring them in here. So I did a PDSA on.
Wait, Kelly, what's a PDSA?
Plan, do, study, act. It's a continual improvement cycle. It's very simple.
But it's more than that. So let's talk about the method of doing a PDSA. You get a blackboard. I stand up there. I'm the teacher. I'm writing it down, and I'm involving them in the PDSA, meaning I'm engaging them in critical thinking skills. It's time, and I say time is love. So when you get a guy who owns a company and he's sitting up there talking to these people, and then and I'm, they're 20 in their 20s, and I'm an old guy, but I'm taking the time to teach them about anodizing and then I'm getting these great questions. Well, how long does it have to stay in there? Well, they've been working on that line for the last 6 months, 3 months, whatever. But now I'm building their knowledge base for what they do. And that's invaluable. That's, to me, Kelly, the heart of Deming, is to say, I'm going to take the time to do this with you. And what do you think that does for they see my commitment to teaching them and my commitment to the company. And that builds the culture that I want to have, meaning I'm not afraid of them. They're not afraid of me. And we can come in and we can have a basis for discussion, because we work from the bottom up. We're a manufacturing company. It's not from the top down. You don't succeed that way.
You're so obviously thoroughly engaged in your business, so far from when you were once thinking, years ago that you might need to retire. Well, I hate to have to ask you this, Fred, but I feel I need to. A lot of people listening to this, I think, will recognize your name and realize that you are, of course, the father of Otto, who was imprisoned in North Korea and died so tragically. And it was such an extreme and profound tragedy. I think most of us just cannot even imagine. But business owners do go through tragedy. And I think some people listening to this might benefit from hearing from you on this a little bit, if you're comfortable talking about it. Can you talk at all about how you managed to go from that to regain the joy of work that you're obviously demonstrating?
Yeah, there's this picture back there, actually. Sure. First of all, you don't have a choice. But you don't have a choice when these things happen. He was invited over there by the government of North Korea, encouraged to go by a university professor. He was kidnapped. It was, all the stuff that made it into the news. We sued the government, and we won this big award. And so when this happened, I got my family together and I said, this isn't a reason to fail. And so are we going to be defined by North Korea, or are we going to define North Korea? And are we going to define Otto's life based on the last week of his life? Or are we going to define Otto's life on the successful, beautiful fine son that he was? So we got to ask those questions of ourselves. And then thankfully I have great children who are really doing well. One's probably going to be a doctor. The other's going to be anything she wants. And so we were able to kind of pull back and focus and say, okay, all right, now, and so that at least got us through the day to day. And then over time, what I've realized, and this has just been in the last probably 6 months, that I was completely in shock. And then I don't even know how I functioned back then. But you say, my customers, they like me, but they can't get shitty parts. All right. And I'm running a company. So I, by all rights, and I've been told this by presidents, prime ministers, and everything in between, I wouldn't blame you if you locked yourself in a room and just drank all the time after what you've been through. Okay. That's option A. Option B is, all right, well, that's not an option. So think about this for people that have been in this situation, and adversity is not unique. We're all going to go through some sort of hell through our lives. It may not be on an international incident that's published all over the world, that sort of thing, which is, goofy and all that, but we're going to have it. And then what I found is I have 2 other children. And so what example am I setting for them if I lock myself in a room and drink all the time? Or what if I mope around and what if I let my business go to hell? And so I found that it was liberating to, develop some good habits. I work out regularly, and just be the person that I always was. I love Otto. I miss Otto. He's a wonderful guy. And there's issues that I have to work through for him. But then I also have to live my life. And my message to anybody that's been through this is, you have the decision to make. And my thought is, if you were a happy, positive person that before this happened, you might want to think about continuing to be that happy, positive person. You have a choice, and I do. And so, my business grew a lot through that time, and simply because the industry did, and that was good.
Were you running the business through that period, or did you step away? How did you handle that?
No. I mean, when you're an entrepreneur, okay, this is the beauty of professional management. You don't have to be there all the time. You put into place systems and processes, and you create a culture that you define the management. And in our case, it's a horizontal type of management. I don't want any one guy that everybody looks to for the answers. That's hero worshiping. I don't want that. You can't run a company that way and be successful. It's not sustaining. So in my case, because I was working intensely on professional management, that's what the Deming Management Methods bring, the ailerons of the world. There's others, but we have professional management. So no, I mean, I've traveled all over the world. I'm going to DC Saturday, as a matter of fact, and I'm not going to be at work tomorrow. So no, I didn't work any harder. I didn't work any less hard. I managed things the way I always did, and I engaged. And it was interesting because I did have a PDSA when Otto was taken there, and said, all right, guys, I feel horrible. And, we just talked about it as a company. And I said, so again, we're going to do what we always do, and we're going to focus, and, the rest of the stuff will take care of itself. And thankfully, the media stuff kind of died down. But I mean, we would get calls every day at work. Does he want to speak on this show? Does he want to speak on this show? That stuff's kind of died down. But that's the beauty of the Deming Management Methods and lifelong learning. And so when you have that, you say, okay, so the business is a function of what we do, okay, but also we have Otto. So what do we do with Otto? What is our goal with Otto? Well, you apply the same principles to that. Okay. Does it make me happy? If it makes me sad, the efforts that I put in, is there a payback that makes it worthwhile? What am I looking for? Just like in business. Well, what are you looking for? So you say in business, what are we looking for? Well, I told you I'd like to grow the business another, let's just say a couple 100%. I'd like to build a bigger platform, maybe have a wider variety of customers. Then you say, okay, well, what's the, you say the auto work. What's the platform there? And that would be personal, but we evaluate that the exact same way. And we say, okay, are we motivated by hate and revenge? All right, that's not healthy. We can't do that. Okay. So if we're not, then what spaces do we want to be in that we can have joy in and still be effective? So we have to be effective.
We only have a little bit of time left. I'm wondering, Fred, what's running the company like for you today? Are there still special cause problems that crop up and turn into crises, or is it running fairly smoothly? And do you get to focus on building the business?
All the above. So the scary thing when you run a business is you're depending on one or two customers, a small business. So you want to have some diversification there. So we lack diversification. So that's a fear, and we worry about that. So then now that the opportunities for our business are, we don't really have a sales platform. We don't know. We've always just waited till customer referrals. We don't have salespeople.
You don't do marketing?
No, none. None. I mean, I have a website. There is no marketing.
Wow.
Zero. So that's where I want to get a board of advisors in, and I want to focus on the marketing aspect. How can we sell professionally? We're good salespeople, but we don't have a method, Kelly. I'll ask a couple guys that are involved. They could sell for us, and then, well, what's the method? What's the approach? And I laugh and they laugh. And I said, because we don't have one. And that's not good, because if we can apply these same concepts to the sales approach, then we can, I believe my prediction is that we'll have great benefit.
Kelly, can you address that? What would Deming have to say about this?
Before the tragedy with Otto happened, that was the next thing we were starting to focus on, to have some discussions about. Fred was also balancing capability at that time.
Right. So
you don't want to get too far ahead. So it's definitely time to look at that. What are the steps? What are the assumptions? What's the aim of a sales model? Right. Well, it's to make sales, but there's probably some subtle things about how you go about making sales that'll make a big change, make a big difference in the success.
Does the Deming method help you figure out just what channels you take? I mean, are we talking digital marketing? Are we talking advertising?
Well, yes and no. The Deming channels help you do fast experiments. We say low cost, low risk, and fast through plan, do, study, act. To say, where are we going to place more of our bets? So let's just start to find out what works and what doesn't. How much is the website helping us? Do we need a more robust website? You start with a lot of good questions, and then you say, now let's take the Deming methodology and find out how we can get answers to those questions. Low cost, low risk, and fast. But
then it's as simple as this. We want to increase sales. And then I have 3 words that I like to use at the company. By what method? And that's when the banana peel hits the pavement. And Kelly, I know we're running out of time, but methods, predictions, I think those are so important. Can you just quickly elaborate on that?
Sure. So Deming always asks the question, by what method? So what we say is that management involves planning. Planning involves prediction, right? So if you're going to predict, you have to have a theory, right? Not some big academic theory. It's a if-then. If we do something with the website, then would we expect to see this? So that's kind of a prediction. So by what method are we going to do that? What's our thinking? What are we going to try? Where are we going to place our bets?
Do you see how this works, Lauren? It's easier than you think.
It strikes me that Fred is an exceptional example in all kinds of ways. I'm wondering how it looks to you from your practice. How often does somebody stick with it and get the kind of results that Fred has gotten? How often do people backslide and, lose the thread and go off in a different direction?
I would say Fred's exceptional in a variety of ways, but we have probably with our partners just in Central Ohio, some 200 companies on that Deming pathway. Some are going faster, some are going slower. That's variation, right? There's no company of any size left anywhere in the world that isn't doing some element of Deming. They may not know that that's where it came from, but you cannot compete unless you're doing some element of Deming. So by what method with sales? I will predict that Fred will be following the Deming method. Let's not be setting quotas.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, let's figure out how our method is going to make this work. A lot of the Deming companies follow Deming's approach, which is you don't put salespeople on commission. There are exceptions to that, of course, right? It's not one size fits all, but 95% of the time, 96% of the time, the Deming-based companies do really well, grow really fast, have higher productivity, higher sales, and higher profits, and their people are on salary and profit sharing.
And Kelly did bring up a great point. We had capacity issues earlier. So in the last year, we've integrated quite a bit of new equipment. So our capacity has went up pretty nicely. So now we don't have those, but we have expectation issues where we don't want to promise the customer something and then disappoint them. You've assumed that we have a sales force. Let me tell you what the issues are. One of the issues for us is the phone rings and it's a new customer. And so who talks to that customer? That's a potential sale. Who talks to that customer? Anybody who answers the phone. That's a problem. And so what is our method to manage this thing? And then do we have this person who's does quality and all these other things? And they've been talking to these potential clients where they're probably not the best person to talk to them. So I'm trying to get our team together and say, hey, let's develop a method that brings this stress down, but that allows us to actually, leverage these calls because they're calling us and I know that we're missing a lot of business.
You may have to go ahead and hire some of those salespeople. Have you gamed out what you think this is going to cost you in terms of an investment to take this step?
No, because it's not a money issue. That's the problem with most business people. They make it a money issue. They don't have a method. They don't have an idea.
Well, explain that because you do have to think about it at some point. I mean, if you needed to expand your factory, that's money. If you need to hire additional employees, that's money. What do you mean when you say it's not a money issue?
There's no concept in place. We don't have a method.
You got to do that first before you think about
only if you want to be successful. Yeah. And again, the ready, fire, aim doesn't work when you're already established. And so the idea is give me some things that I can focus on here. And you say, how much does it cost? Well, that would be the last thing that I would want to. It's not a money issue. It doesn't matter what it costs because if you get the right method that's going to be so great and successful, I'll spend whatever, won't I? If I believe in it. Yeah, but generally these things they don't cost a lot.
Thank you both for taking the time. My thanks to Kelly Allan and Fred Warmbier. This has been great. Wait, don't leave yet. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like the 21 Hats owners to address, send it to me by replying to your morning report or by email at lauren@21hats.com. That's LOREN@21hats.com. Do it now before you forget. And don't be afraid to tell Jay what you really think. He can take it. And if you got something out of this conversation, help us reach more business owners. Tell a friend. Subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to the Morning Report at 21hats.com. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Okay, now you can leave. Thanks for listening, everyone.